The Fairmont Copley Plaza's grand ballroom was a sea of designer gowns and self-congratulation as Boston's elite gathered to celebrate Victoria Hamilton's retirement from the Hamilton Children's Hope Foundation. 10 years of allegedly selfless dedication to underprivileged youth, funded by what the Society papers called her mysterious benefactor. Mysterious indeed. Darling, my husband James adjusted his bow tie, a nervous habit he developed since I showed him the evidence last week. Are you sure about this? Maybe we could handle it privately. Like how your mother privately handled my parents' deaths? I smiled, watching Victoria work the room in her custom Oscar de la Renta. Or how she privately transferred their foundation's assets while I was still in grief counseling. James flinched. He'd been as much a victim of his mother's manipulation as I had, signing papers he hadn't read while drowning in the aftermath of the accident that took both my parents. Victoria had swooped in, all maternal concern and promises to handle the difficult details. The difficult details being my parents' $30 million charitable trust. Caroline. Victoria air kissed my cheeks, her diamond bracelet catching the light. I wasn't sure you'd come. You've been so occupied lately. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, touching the USB drive in my clutch. After all, this foundation means as much to me as it does to you. Maybe more. Her perfectly Botoxed forehead tried to furrow. More? Whatever do you mean? Before I could answer, the evening's MC took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the children from Street Martin's home, here to perform in honor of their beloved benefactor. 8 children filed onto the stage, wearing new clothes that probably cost more than their families made in a month. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the picture of philanthropic emotion. Aren't they precious? She whispered to her society friends. This is why we do this work. Is it? I asked, just loud enough to carry. Is that why you falsified transfer documents while my husband was sedated after identifying his in-laws' bodies? Victoria's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. I don't know what you're, or why you closed my parents' free medical clinic in Dorchester to fund your charity galas. The clinic that served 300 families. James stepped closer, finally finding his voice. Mother, what is she talking about? Nothing, darling. Caroline is obviously still struggling with her loss. The loss you exploited. I pulled out my tablet, displaying the original trust documents. My parents spent 20 years building their foundation. 20 years of actual work in communities that needed help. Not photo ops and charity balls. The children on stage had finished their song, but no one was applauding. Victoria's inner circle had gone quiet, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Those documents are private, Victoria started. They were private, I agreed. Until your mysterious benefactor status made the FBI curious. Funny how many wealthy donors wanted to know who was really behind the Hamilton Foundation's sudden success. Victoria's society smile cracked slightly. Whatever you think you've discovered. I discovered everything, I cut her off. Every forged signature, every manipulated transfer, every dollar you stole while pretending to comfort your grieving son and daughter-in-law. The ballroom had grown unnaturally quiet. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, sensing the tension building at the main table. I have no idea what she's talking about, Victoria announced to her watching friends. Grief can make people imagine terrible things. Like imagining my mother's signature on transfer documents dated 3 days after her death. I projected the documents onto the ballroom's main screen. Documents you had James sign while he was on prescription sedatives. James stared at the screen, recognition dawning. Those papers, you said they were just insurance forms. She said a lot of things, I agreed. Like how my parents' foundation was too much responsibility for me in my grief. How she'd take care of everything. And she did take care of everything, right into her own charity's accounts. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand shook as she set down her champagne. These accusations are absurd. I've spent 10 years helping children. Using stolen money, I finished. Money that was meant for the medical clinic, the scholarship program, the community outreach my parents and their lives building. Tell me, Victoria, how many gowns like that one could have funded a year of insulin for the clinic's diabetic patients? Now see here. Victoria's husband George stood, his CEO authority failing to mask his panic. This is hardly the time or place. Actually, it's exactly the time and place. I gestured toward the back of the ballroom where people were entering. because these are the real beneficiaries of my parents' legacy. Through the doors came faces Victoria had never wanted to see at her galas. Former patients from the shuttered clinic, students who'd lost their scholarships when the trust was drained, community workers dismissed when Victoria redirected the foundation's focus to more photogenic causes. Mrs. Chen. Victoria's voice cracked as she recognized her former housekeeper. "What are you doing here?" "Telling the truth," Mrs. Chen replied, stepping forward. "About how your children's foundation closed the free clinic where my grandson got his cancer treatments. About how you fired me when I asked why the clinic's funding disappeared." More people stepped forward, each with their own story. Scholarship students who had to drop out of college, single mothers who lost childcare support, elderly patients left without medication after the clinic's pharmacy program ended. "These allegations are baseless," George blustered. "We have documentation." "Falsified documentation," I corrected, switching the projection to show financial records. "My parents' foundation served over 3,000 families annually. The Hamilton Foundation. Despite claiming triple the budget, you've helped fewer than 200 people in 10 years, mostly with symbolic gestures at publicity events." James stood transfixed as the evidence mounted. The summer house in Newport, the new yacht. "Mother, where did the money really come from?" "We were protecting you," Victoria insisted. "Both of you were in no condition to manage such responsibility after the accident. So you managed it right into your own accounts." I pulled up more documents, like the $2 million transferred to your personal foundation the same day you had James sign those insurance papers, or the trust assets you used as collateral for your country club membership. The socialites who'd spent years applauding Victoria's generosity were now backing away, their phones undoubtedly already calling their lawyers to distance themselves from the scandal. The children, Victoria gestured desperately at the kids from Street Martins, still standing awkwardly on stage. "Think about the children we've helped." "Let's think about them," I agreed, nodding to a woman in the back. "Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to tell everyone about the real Street Martins home?" The former administrator stepped forward. Street Martins served over 100 children before Mrs. Hamilton's foundation took over. Now it houses 8 children, the most photogenic ones, chosen for events like this. The rest were transferred to state facilities. Victoria's perfect mask finally cracked. "You have no right." "I have every right." I cut her off. "Those were my parents' life's work you stole. Their legacy you twisted into this performance of charity." James had gone pale, remembering. "The papers. I was on so many medications after the accident. Mother, how could you?" "We did it for you," George insisted. "Your position in society demanded certain appearances. Appearances paid for with stolen money." I projected the final document. The FBI's forensic accounting team was very thorough. "Would you like to see where every dollar of my parents' trust actually went?" Victoria lunged for her purse, but security guards were already moving in, not the hotel's security, but federal agents who'd been waiting for this moment. Victoria Hamilton, the lead agent, stepped forward. "We have some questions about the transfer of charitable assets and tax fraud." "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "I'm being awarded Humanitarian of the Decade." "Not anymore." I nodded to the event organizer, who was already removing Victoria's name from the evening's program. "But don't worry, my parents' restored foundation will put the award money to better use. Actually helping people, not just posing with them for photos." 1 year later, I stood in the newly reopened Thomas and Mary Sullivan Medical Clinic, watching as my parents' portrait was rehung in the lobby. The bright, modern facility was a far cry from the empty building Victoria had left to decay while hosting champagne fundraisers. Mrs. Sullivan Hamilton, Dr. Patel, the clinic's returning head physician, approached with a tablet. "The diabetes management program is back to full capacity. We've already reconnected with 70% of our former patients." James, standing beside me, squeezed my hand. He'd spent the past year helping rebuild everything his mother had destroyed, working alongside the community members Victoria had deemed not our kind of people. "The Scholarship Foundation is ready for the new term," my assistant added. 45 students, full rides, including Mrs. Chen's grandson. He's starting medical school in the fall. Victoria had pled guilty to reduced charges, accepting a 5-year sentence served in a minimum security facility. George had resigned from his CEO position, their social circle evaporating as quickly as their illicitly gained status. The new Street Martin's home opens next month, James said quietly. All 120 beds. No more picking kids for their photo potential. The home would operate as my parents originally intended, providing real support and education, not just staging opportunities for wealthy donors to feel charitable. Victoria's designer furniture had been sold to fund job training programs. The FBI finished their final audit, my lawyer reported. They've traced most of the diverted funds. The Hamiltons' assets will be liquidated to restore the original trust amounts. Victoria's society friends had scrambled to return their donations once the fraud was exposed. Amazing how quickly charity could be undone when it might implicate donors in financial crimes. The Community Outreach Center is at capacity, Dr. Patel continued. The mental health services your mother designed are making a real difference. She would have loved seeing it working as she planned. I touched my mother's face in the portrait. She and my father had built their foundation from nothing, working late nights and weekends to serve their community. How would they feel knowing their work lived on, stronger after surviving Victoria's attempt to corrupt it? The Hamilton Children's Hope Foundation is being formally dissolved, my assistant noted. The press wants to know if you'll comment on the irony of Victoria receiving fan mail from prison asking for charitable donations. Tell them the only statement we're making is in our work, I replied, watching as patients filled the waiting room. Real people getting real help, not props for society photos. James had sold his family's Newport mansion, using the proceeds to fund the clinic's expansion. His mother's betrayal had opened his eyes to the hollow nature of the society she'd sacrificed everything to impress. Your parents' original board members are meeting next week, my assistant added. They're excited about restoring the International Medical Training Program. The program Victoria had canceled because it didn't photograph well would now train doctors from underserved communities worldwide. My parents' vision was expanding beyond even their original dreams. A young mother walked past with her child, heading to the pediatric wing that now bore my parents' names, not as a vanity gesture, but as a promise to uphold their values. Sometimes, James said softly, I wonder how many lives were harmed while we were too blind to see what she was doing. We can't change that, I said, touching the clinic's new mission statement engraved where Victoria's self-congratulatory plaque had once hung. But we can honor the legacy she tried to steal, not with galas and photo ops, but with actual service. The clinic hummed with purpose, doctors, patients, and staff working together in the way my parents had envisioned. Their foundation hadn't just survived Victoria's attempt to corrupt it. It had emerged stronger, its mission clearer for having been tested. Your mother's prison sentence ends in 4 years, my lawyer reminded me. Would you like me to prepare restraining orders? I looked around at my parents' true legacy, not the society parties and fake philanthropy Victoria had created, but the real work of helping others. No need, I smiled. The best revenge isn't punishment, it's restoration.